Hello and welcome to the Organ Show with me, Andrew Palmley.
And me, Cheryl Eniver.
We have a programme packed with fun for you tonight as we enter the world of the cinema organ with some of the country's top performers.
But first, a huge thank you to our many viewers who have taken the trouble to send in such lovely comments. Keep them coming in and lots of thumbs up, please. In a moment, we will be visiting Richard Hills, who's tonight's very special guest and our guest improviser. But first, Andrew will play for us each of tonight's themes for Maestro Hill's improvisation. The first theme is Londonderry Air. Thank you. The second, Ode to Joy. And the third, Rule Britannia. Now, one of those themes will be chosen at random later, and no doubt Maestro Hills will weave his magic.
Well, we were very sorry that there was a technical problem last night during Tansy Castledyne's live interview. And I'm grateful to the many viewers who commented in what has become the catchphrase of 2020, "You're on mute." One viewer, however, from Switzerland commented, and let me quote, "It's really impressive having the show live and very professional, despite the sound problems yesterday. It actually heightened the fact that you were live and made it more intimate and more exciting. I hope everyone is able to enjoy the live aspect and have some fun." Well, fun is the order of the day today. Tansy herself has been most gracious, and her interview was re-recorded after the live broadcast, and it's now available on the RCO YouTube channel.
But now it's time to see the second in our series of films featuring female organists. Tonight we have a very special piece about the wonderful Jennifer Bates.
In March 2020, the musical world lost one of its brightest stars, Jennifer Bate. The Royal College of Organists and the Society of Women Organists would like to pay tribute to her. Besides being a great recitalist, Jennifer Bate was a renowned teacher, and in 2004 she founded the Jennifer Bate Organ Academy, which accepts only girls for a 5-day residential course. Anna Lapwood now interviews Alice Phillips, the headmistress of St Catherine's School, Bramley, home to the Jennifer Bate Organ Academy.
Yeah, you kind of need to get a young person to believe they're being treated as a fellow adult, and I think you never felt that Jennifer was 70, not in heart and mind at all. And I remember watching her working with one very, very shy and not terribly well young person, and just giving a spark where I'd thought, gosh, are we going to get a spark, or is this going to be an overwhelming thing? And no, she just persisted. And after you'd all gone up to the common room, and then we did have an adults around the table, and another bottle of wine might have come out at that point at the end of the day, she would then very seriously carry on discussing the students with the directors of music and the music staff, and not at all critically, but very much on I think we need to do this, and I think I'll take so-and-so off here and give them an extra half hour on that, and can you do this, and I think I need to change how we're going to do this, so that we build on that moment of confidence, and absolutely making sure everybody had the best possible time, which I think I don't think it's rare. I think a lot of people running courses run them very professionally, but it was just very personal for somebody who's as big a name as she was.
Just sort of touching on this, lastly, what was really extraordinary was seeing how even towards the end, when her health was not what it used to be, that support continued, and that amazing the amazing dinner and recital that she gave, she had a very sore back, and yet she still played an incredible recital and then continued to entertain and ask everyone about how their work was going. She was just an extraordinary lady.
I remember, yes, because we were obviously, I was aware of what was going on for quite some time, and I honestly, I think we had 2 more jabos than I was actually expecting.
Mm.
And when we did the gala dinner for the anniversary of 15th, wasn't it? She was insistent that she wanted to play. And I remember going, during the week of the course, she was practicing as well as doing masterclasses. She wasn't cutting any corners. And I remember going around to see her in the dressing room beforehand, which was actually a tiny little pre-prep classroom with miniature chairs, which backed onto the hall in the preps. Well, the wonderful organ that Evelyn Greaves gave us so generously, really to commemorate Jennifer's involvement with the course. And she had been practicing. And we'd said all along we had yet to hear the full colours of this organ. And we were just blown away, weren't we? I mean, it was just extraordinary.
Wasn't that fantastic? Now, I'm very excited about this bit. We go live to the Musical Museum in Kew Gardens, where Richard Hills is waiting to entertain us.
Here, our fine Wurlitzer pipe organ in captivity and in preservation. Now, we've got a combination of live music and also pre-recorded events for you this evening. But before we get to our pre-recorded segments, or indeed any of the content, we thought it would be a good idea to let you hear a little bit about what makes the theatre organ tick. How is it different from, or indeed similar to, classical organs, and what are some of the things that the player will encounter when seated at one of these magnificent consoles. And I'm delighted to say that to help me to explain, it's my pleasure to introduce the chairman of the UK's Cinema Organ Society, the largest such preservation group in the country, Simon Glethill. Good evening, Simon.
Thanks very much, Richard. It's nice to be here. The Wurlitzer at the museum is a good example of its type, having 12 ranks of pipes, some of which are extended upwards and downwards from the standard compass of 61 pipes to enable them to be played at multiple pitches using the organ's relay. For example, the diapason is extended by an octave upwards and downwards, so it has 85 pipes. And the various diapason stops around the console all play the same rank of pipes at standard pitch, an octave higher, and an octave lower. The most extreme example of this extension is the concert flute, which has 97 pipes and plays at 16, 8, 4 and 2-foot pitches. Hopefully you were able to hear those last ones. And also at the fractional pitches of 2 2/3 and 1 3/5. The pipes are all enclosed in 2 chambers, a designated main and solo, each of which has its own swell pedal at the console. Almost all ranks play in every division, so unlike a church organ, the divisions aren't independent. The particular selection of ranks and the pitches at which they're available do differ from division to division, however. The lower manual is designated accompaniment and used for accompaniment sounds. The middle manual is called grate and performs a similar function to a church organ grate. And the top manual is called solo and is used as its name suggests. In addition to the diapason, theatre organs have another important foundation stop, the tibia clausa, which is a large-scale stopped wooden flute, a bit like this, although you'll be relieved to know I didn't steal this pipe from the Wurlitzer. The ones in the Wurlitzer are a bit fatter than this one. Played by itself without the tremulant, the tibia sounds pretty much like what it is. But when the tremulant is turned on, it turns into the characteristic singing voice of the theatre organ. All the ranks are affected by the tremulants, of which there are 5 in this organ, set at slightly varying depths and speeds. Tremulants are used frequently in theatre organ playing, but of course they can be turned off. This organ has 3 chorus reeds, the first of which is the English horn. Not cor anglais tone, as you might expect, but a bright fanfare reed. Then there's the French trumpet, slightly fiery, and it sounds good without the tremulant. And also with tremulant. And finally, in this family, there's the tuba, broad and smooth. And extended down to 16-foot pitch in the pedal division. There are also various colour reeds, including the saxophone with its characteristic conical brass pipes, the kinura, which is a very thin and buzzy sounding reed, and the vox humana, which is usually played in theatrical music with the tremulant on. There are also various tuned percussions playable from the organ console, including xylophone, glockenspiel, and celesta. And a variety of drums, cymbals, and other untuned percussions. Finally, on this whistle-stop tour, a word about a theatre organ speciality, second touch, which is available on 2 manuals of this organ, whereby additional contrasting voices may be introduced by pressing the key down past the first key contact and down through to the second key contact. And this enables the player, after a bit of practice, to introduce counter melodies which he or she can play on the same manual, the accompaniment manual, at the same time as the rest of the accompaniment sound. A bit like this. It's easy to see, I think, why Robert Hope Jones, who worked with the Wurlitzer Company to develop instruments like this, called them unit orchestras.
Well, thank you very much, Simon, for that whistle-stop tour. And there's one other task I believe Simon needs to help me with before he disappears.
Yes.
And that is to proffer up the envelopes containing the 3 themes, which I believe back in the studio you've been all set to give to me. And in one of them is a theme for tonight's improvisation. I very much enjoyed hearing the improvisations of my colleagues, incidentally, during the week. And I'm going to choose that one.
Okay.
Thank you, in a socially distanced way. And I shall open it in due course. Well, now that we've explored a little bit about how the instruments work, we thought the next best thing to do would be to take you back to basics. This kind of instrument was developed in order to provide subtle and appropriate and dynamic accompaniments to silent film presentations. And we're very lucky in this country in that we have someone in Donald Mackenzie who is a real master of the art form. And we also have a couple of instruments which have survived in their original theatres. And in those cases, the organs are still in working cinemas as opposed to buildings that have become bingo halls and other uses. And so we're going to start by taking you off to the West End of London to introduce you to Donald Mackenzie and to demonstrate the wonderful Compton organ to be found to this day playing in the Odeon, Leicester Square. Donald, thank you so much. That was wonderful, and it's great to be here at the Odeon, Leicester Square and to see the Duchess, as I believe she's affectionately known, in person again. Thank you for welcoming us here. And your association with this organ goes back, am I right in thinking, nearly 30 years now?
Yeah, goodness me, yes. October 93, I first came to start my residency playing for a Disney show back then, and it's lovely to have you with us this morning as well.
Well, this instrument has really achieved great fame in the theatre organ world. What is it about it that's unique?
Well, I think there's a number of things which might contribute to its fame. It's unique in the fact that it has 5 manuals. There was no other 5-manual cinema organ built bespoke by Compton in a theatre. It's the last in the West End of London, in a working theatre. Again, I think that's perhaps to do with the fact that this is, you know, the #1 premier house.
And how wonderful that it's still possible to come in and hear it being played before a film show.
Indeed.
And yet this theatre is 1937, is that correct?
Yes, 2nd of November 1937 it opened.
So it's rather unusual, isn't it, that so many of the theatre organs we had in this country were installed long after silent pictures were the order of the day. How would this have been used in 1937?
Well, very much as an entertainment. So it was come in and have your ice cream or intermission music. That's what it was used for.
And broadcasts, of course. So.
Broadcasts accompanying variety acts. But again, broadcast didn't necessarily bring money into the cinema. This was used as cinematic entertainment.
And it's rather lovely that you've brought silent movie to this theatre yourself over the years, and so the life of the organ has more or less come full circle in that sense. Why do you suppose someone hit on the idea of accompanying a silent picture with an organ?
Well, I suppose it's louder than a piano. That's the first thing, or can be louder than a piano. And perhaps some of the early halls, silent picture houses, were converted chapels which already had pipe organs in there, so it would have made sense to use what was there.
Very much so. Well, even though it was installed long after talkers had been introduced to the country, this organ, and indeed many of the theatre organs that were produced in the 1930s, still retained some hangover from the days of the silent pictures, I think, didn't they, with the special effects?
Yes.
What have you got at your disposal here?
Well, there are a number of bangs and thuds on this instrument. And apart from the tuned percussions, which was sort of a feature of the orchestral organ, then there's an array of effects here. We've got a siren, an auto horn, a fire bell, a train whistle, and a steamboat siren. And there's even a grand gong, which is over on this side.
Wonderful. To be used with taste and discretion at all times.
Absolutely.
You can really understand, can't you, why film producers and directors were so concerned about handing over their artistic material to the organists, because one musician had the power really to make or break a scene and to change the meaning perhaps from that which was originally intended. How do you go about selecting appropriate music for pictures, and is it all improvised, or do you use a mixture, if you'll forgive the pun, of pre-written and also improvising?
Yeah, well, I approach it very much in an improvisatory way. In some days I will improvise everything from the themes right the way through. Other days I'll use classical themes or well-known melodies that hopefully the audience know, and they can hear these little quotes. There's plenty of good reference material from movie music from the 30s, the 40s and the 50s, which you can sort of draw on techniques and ideas of how to, weave the magic around.
Brilliant. Well, and I imagine that good timing is certainly really the key to success. What do you think the trickiest genre of film is to score? And, I mean, how do you get the timing so precise?
Well, perhaps a big love picture is the most difficult, because you have quite a slow build-up, and you have the sort of the architecture of the film. You've got dramatic content as well, so it's all the time building, bringing towards the climax of the picture, and then hitting that. It's not just like somebody being slapped across the head with a rubber mallet or something. That's quite easy to do. But the difficult thing is to build up a dramatic picture from the beginning, keep an audience with it.
Now, we're very lucky to have you with us today, Donald. You've really made your mark as one of the greatest silent picture organists that we have today.
Thank you.
You've chosen some clips to illustrate some of the main scenarios that you may have to encounter in films. So what's up first?
Well, first we've got Buster Keaton in a short clip from 1 Week, and there's a lovely sort of bit of juxtaposed between a motorbike and a taxi. And, well, it's also got a theme that many church organists will recognise.
Wonderful.
that was absolutely hilarious. Now, what's coming up next?
Well, we've got John Barrymore, Dr. Jekyll, and Mr. Hyde.
Oh,
and what I've done in this is to show you dramatic content, and then also the silence of silence, where you can use silence to emphasize
the drama.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, that was a real,
yes,
a real
don't
dose.
look under the bed. Yes.
Exactly. What have you chosen for us next?
Well, a love scene, and one of the
Classic.
greatest, to my mind, love portrayers on the silver screen was Rudolph Valentino, and this is an excerpt from The Eagle, and it also includes The Getaway.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we understand there is a small hiatus with the broadcast from the Musical Instrument Museum in Kew. So while we're waiting for that to rectify itself, I'm delighted to welcome my old friend Paul Goby, who's in the studio here with us tonight. Paul Goby, the organist of the Norwegian Church in Rotherhithe. And in a way, Paul, I see you here as a herald for International Organ Day this coming Saturday. It's a great pleasure to see you.
Thank you very much.
Now, Paul and I have known each other for a long time, and he's a London man through and through, but he has actually spent his life halfway between London and Oslo, indeed. He's bilingual, and at present he's the organist of the Norwegian Church in Rotherhithe. And tell us, Paul, what is life like in Norway, both what's life like, you know, food, cuisine, countryside, and also what's it like to be an organist there?
Thank you for inviting me. Well, having had a Norwegian mother and being brought up in this country, really, I was very keen to see what life was like in Norway, both to live there, as you say, and to play there as a professional organist. And there's been a long tradition of British organists working in Norway, not least because most of them, even in small parish churches, are salaried. Oh. And my situation was to have, in fact, 4 small churches that took it in turns to have their services, so one wasn't scurrying from one to the other, and in fact do some individual teaching as well during the week, and that pretty much paid the bills, although the bills could be considerable, especially if you wish to indulge in going out of an evening. But that is quite some time ago. I was there for, in fact, just the princely sum of a year, 25 years ago already now.
You're not old enough to be 25 years.
Too kind. But I don't think things have changed that much, although since I was there, the church tax, which funded a lot of activities, is no longer compulsory. I think it's something that can be exercised locally or voluntarily, I'm not quite sure.
It's interesting, but the organists are salaried, so does that mean the organs themselves are looked after and maintained by the state?
That certainly was the case when I was there, and I think there's certainly a good position these days where there's less scrabbling around, shall we say, for funds to build things like the rather splendid Harrison and Manda organs that exist in parts of Norway and now, and quite recently, have been built there too.
It's fascinating. I had the privilege of visiting you when you were living in Norway, and I can remember only 2 things. The freezing weather and the fact that we seem to eat an awful lot of whale meat. And it seemed to me it could be a monotonous lifestyle. No disrespect to our Norwegian viewers, thank you very much. But have I hit the nail on the head, or am I wildly wide?
And it was, in fact, mid-August, of course, when you were there.
Yes, plenty of snow, though.
When I was there during the February, which coincided with the Lillehammer Winter Olympics, the temperature was, in fact, minus 26. Beautiful, but the things happen to your body at that temperature which are indescribable in public.
I hope the churches are well heated. I mean, crikey.
The churches are very well heated, and that, I think, certainly in the home contributed to the high utility costs as well, should we say.
Yeah. So you've gone from living in Norway and playing the organ to living back in London, in Rotherhithe, in the Norwegian Church. Now, is it true that the Norwegian royal family are regular visitors to the Norwegian Church in Rotherhithe?
It is. The most regular and frequent visitor back in the day was His Majesty King Olaf V, who had a regular tradition of visiting the church just prior to, as many people might recall seeing, appearing at the cenotaph in one of those high balconies, watching the proceedings, and he was, of course, a close relation of the royal family here, and particularly close with the Queen and the Queen Mother. And since then, it's been a regular tradition for the current King, King Harold, Queen Sonia, and the Crown Prince and the Princess have been any number of times. Regular, if not often, and not as often perhaps as the old King Olaf, but we count ourselves lucky to have patronage on those terms.
So if perhaps somebody lived in Rotherhithe, perhaps, how would they get to meet these royal family members? Would they just have to? Would we spot them walking the streets of Rotherhithe?
Well, perhaps not quite in the sort of the bicycling sense of the Dutch monarchy, should we say? But a fair bet, this year accepted, is to perhaps show up on National Day, which is the 17th of May, which certainly in this country may be a date associated with other festivities.
Freedom and festivities.
But speaking as an inhabitant of Rotherhithe yourself,
indeed,
I would perhaps not suggest coming on this 17th of May, but certainly in the
Next
future, many people in their wonderful national costumes can be seen out and about and merrymaking and consuming copious amounts of waffles and coffee.
It's in the diary.
And I think whale meat may have been consigned to history.
Excellent.
Hooray, hooray.
But you fly the Norwegian flag in all sorts of other ways, don't you? So could you tell us a little bit about the Greek Society and the Anglo-Norse Society?
So I suppose being the sort of the musical contact that the Norwegian Church has over the years led to a number of invitations to join other groups, and we have, as you correctly say, the Grieg Society, which was founded in 1993 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the composer, and the Anglo-Norse Society, which is considerably older. Our patrons are the Queen here and His Majesty King Harold, and we were lucky enough to have both of those monarchs. Quite a rare occasion to have both reigning monarchs at one event 2 years ago for a reception, and both of those groups promote Anglo-Norwegian connections, not least musical, and socializing and food and scholarships.
Very glamorous and Rotherhithe, you know.
Promoting harmony.
Promoting
Why
harmony.
not? Preserve harmony. We'll come back to that later. Well, thank you very much, Paul. I hear that our link to the Musical Instrument Museum in Kew is back on. So, ladies and gentlemen, with thanks to Paul Goby, and we'll be speaking to him again later, let's go back to the wonderful world of the Wurlitzer.
Go.
Well, there we are. That's the joy of live television, is it not? I gather there was a little gremlin in the system. Perhaps the signal got blown off course by all that blustery Blackpool air, but we're hoping once again to be able to go now to see Phil Kelsall to tell us a little bit about the unusual art form of playing the organ for ballroom dancing.
Well, this programme is all about the theatre organ, and so it's slightly ironic that we're going to talk now about a theatre organ which, to many people, is the most famous theatre organ on the planet, and yet it's not in a theatre. Can you tell us a little bit about the Tower Wurlitzer and how it came to being and how it's remained famous all these years?
It's strange, isn't it? It's one of the few theatre organs that arrived in a theatre. It's in a ballroom, in the Tower Ballroom, of course, which is a huge ballroom. And going back to 1929, there wasn't an organ in the ballroom. And the ballroom were using an orchestra, like a small orchestra, about 15 or 16 members. And I'm sure it was a management decision when they heard about the theatre organ being a unit orchestra, a one-man band, if you will. I'm sure they must have got their financial brains ticking and thought, we could have one of these instruments and this will save us 15 musicians' wages per night. So I'm not certain, but I'm sure that's a lot to do with the fact they purchased the Wurlitzer in 1929. Of course, they had a few people playing it. One of them was an FRCO, would you believe? And but they couldn't really master the technique of playing for dancing, because before 1929, no one had ever played a theatre organ for dancing. It was a totally new experience for the organists and the dancers alike. So they had a few guys and couldn't really cope with it. And then a gentleman called Reginald Dixon came along to audition in 1929. I think the Tower were about to get rid of the organ because, it wasn't a great success really. And Dixon came along and he auditioned, got the job, and he started in Easter 1930. And he mastered the art of playing for dancing, and he became a huge success. And he was very popular with the holidaymakers and very popular with people dancing as well. So the instrument he played on was a smallish instrument for the size of the room. It was 10 ranks and 2 manuals. And Dixon very quickly realized, it wasn't large enough really to do the job. So he persuaded the Blackpool Tower to purchasing a new organ, which was a fair bit larger, 13 ranks, and then he added a 14th rank a few years later. But the new organ was 3 keyboards, 3 manuals, and 13 ranks, and then he added a tuba later on to make it 14. So it's now 14 ranks, and the spec hasn't changed, since 1940.
Phil, you've been the principal resident organist of the Tower Ballroom since 1977, an incredible length of time, and putting your predecessor Reginald Dixon's 40-year reign somewhat in the shade now. Can you remember how you came to land the top job in the theatre organ world, and how old were you at the time, if you don't mind my asking?
It all started when I was about 11 years old, and my father used to take me to the Tower to watch Reg play, and we used to go every Sunday night, I remember, and the place was absolutely packed out. This was for a Sunday night organ concert, and Reg would play for an hour and a half, and we would go every week, and this got so frequent that we ended up moving to Blackpool, and we've lived here, 50 years now, but that was all because of going to watch Reg Dixon. And something must have clicked inside me, because I was absolutely hooked on it, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And when we moved to Blackpool, I was able to go in the Tower nearly every day. A bit of a nerd, really, but probably made a nuisance of myself as well. But every day, and then Reg retired in 1970, and his predecessor was called Ernest Broadbent. His successor was called Ernest Broadbent, and I got to know Ernest because basically I was in there all day and every day, so we got to know each other, and he invited me to have a go on the organ one evening, which of course I jumped at the chance. And then that got to be, he used to let me play in the winter time, used to let me play once a week for about an hour every week, which was very kind of him. And then a post came in available in the circus orchestra, which Ernest very kindly recommended me for the job. So I did. I went to look at the music and make sure I could play it, basically, and said yes, I could play it, I could manage it, and I did. I played in the circus for 2 years, but during this time, the circus is below the ballroom. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the circus is below the 4 legs of the tower, and the ballroom is just to one side. But being on the tower premises, I was able to nip into the ballroom and deputise on certain, because they knew I played the Wurlitzer, of course. So Ernest had a day off every Friday, and I used to step in and play for him, on his day off. And then Ernest retired in 1977, and then I was just a natural person to take over from him in 1977, and I've been there ever since.
Well, let's have a listen to some of those very famous Wurlitzer sounds then from the Tower Ballroom. Well, thank you, Phil. That's how it's done. And if you have an interest in taking part in or just witnessing the organ being played for ballroom dancing. You don't even have to go to the Tower Ballroom in order to witness it, because here at the Musical Museum in Kew, they have tea dances as well, some of them even performed by the great man Phil Kelsall himself. So we're very grateful to Phil for his time, and indeed all of our contributors this evening, including Donald Mackenzie and Simon Gledhill from the UK's Cinema Organ Society. And if you want to hear or find out more about the COS, as it's known, you just have to look at www.cinema-organs.org for more fun facts and content. In fact, we did even prepare one more thing for you this evening, which hopefully will be very soon available online, showcasing one of the UK's most famous and also largest theatre organs, the wonderful Wurlitzer organ, which now sings out at the Troxy in Stepney, a fabulous 3,500 seat movie theatre now used as a multi-purpose venue. Now, I mentioned that Phil comes here to the museum, as do many organists throughout the year, myself included. So do have a look at the museum's social media and also website to find out details of upcoming events, concerts, and occasions where this fine Wurlitzer, which incidentally started its life at the Regal Cinema Kingston-on-Thames, is used. So it's a full program of events, so do check that out if you want to hear more. My thanks very much to Simon Hill, Steve Barrett-White, and the team here at the museum. So before I hand you back over to Cheryl and Andrew in Knightsbridge, there's just one more facet of the theatre organ to explore. We've covered already silent movies, we've covered ballroom dancing, and there's one more that I particularly wanted to cover in the programme this evening, that of concert repertoire. Nowadays, it's very rare, apart from when Donald is playing, of course, to see the organ used in its original guise, but quite often the organ is used for solo performances. It's yet another unusual development. After silent films had their day, the theatre organs were used as intermission instruments and as a great vehicle for one person, as Simon was saying, to play the unit orchestra and to play the pop tunes of the day. Now, I'm not going to play a pop tune of the day, I don't think anyway, but I am going to open this envelope and see what's inside. This is your choice, I believe, of improvisation. Incidentally, I've just remembered, if you want to find out more about this particular Wurlitzer, there is a brand new book available on the instrument and the theatre organ's place in popular culture, which is available from the museum's website, and I'm told, as they say, all good bookstores. So here we go. And I see you've chosen the Londonderry Air. So thank you very much for that beautiful melody. And let's see what comes out as I turn around to present that to you. It's been a great pleasure to bring something of the theatre organ to you this evening. Hope it whets your appetite for more. Renewed thanks to everyone concerned. And after this, we'll hand back over to Knightsbridge.
That was the incredible Richard Hills. Amazing. Now, if you enjoyed that, I'm certain you'll enjoy our second instalment from Rachel Mahon and Sarah Svensson, aka Organised Crime. Thanks so much to Organised Crime for another extraordinary performance.
Well, when you were busy watching that marvellous performance from Blackpool and elsewhere, Paul and I were chatting further about his Norwegian connections and indeed our guest improviser on Sunday when Gerard Brooks was here. One of the 3 themes that he selected was the theme Mamma Mia, obviously from the play Mamma Mia. Now, Paul, I think you've got a connection.
Well, being the centre for the Norwegian community, we tend to have interesting people associated with us, and the original Sophie, for those cognoscenti of Mamma Mia, one of the main parts in Mamma Mia is indeed a Norwegian whose wedding I played for and children's baptisms I played for, and she is called Lisa Stocker. So,
well, I'm amazed. I mean, you never cease to amaze me, Paul.
and other distinguished people who have graced the building, including organists like David Sanger, William Mackay, and the occasional former Lord Mayor of London.
Well, they're 10 a penny, as we all know. So, Paul, thank you very much for joining us tonight. If you'd like to know more about anything you've seen tonight, or indeed yesterday and the day before, then please go to our website, or if you want to ask a question, go to admin@rco.org.uk. Now, one thing I've not mentioned to you so far is that we've commissioned a brand new oil painting called The Organ Lesson by the artist Michael Allen Kidd. And this painting we will show you tomorrow, and we are planning to auction it for charity. So if you've got deep pockets and you fancy a painting of The Organ Lesson, and I promise you, you're going to be amazed when you see it, then we will exhibit it to you for the first time tomorrow. Not quite finished yet, but will come soon. And of course, we are also this week launching the 2022 RCO calendar competition. We'd love you to submit your photographs for possible inclusion in that calendar. And the more beautiful your building, your organ, or the countryside around you is, the more likely it is that we will be able to include your particular photograph. So do send those in to us, please. Now, Cheryl, what's on tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow we have an exclusive visit to the United Grand Lodge of England in Covent Garden, and our guest improviser is Carl Jackson, who is the organist of Her Majesty's Chapel Royal in Hampton Court. Very glamorous. Very glamorous. And I'll be speaking to the chairman of the RCO Foundation, Professor Chris Wood. And don't worry, we know you loved our virtuoso barrel organist, and he will be back again this week.
Fantastic. I can't wait for that. That was one of the highlights for me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we go, can I just thank Paul Goby once again, especially for helping us out so manfully during the moment when our link went down. And also, can I thank Richard Hills and all his friends in the cinema organ world. Most especially, can I thank you all for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.